I would like to begin by thanking our colleagues here in Nankai University, particularly Francesco, for organizational labors. But I want to thank especially my colleague and collaborator, Wolfgang Grassel, who first introduced me to this topic. He is a long-standing contributor, an Austrian contributor to both Austrian philosophy and Austrian economics. So there is this common view, according to which the US at least, or in Western capitalist countries, manufacturing is collapsing and the service industries are expanding. And this view is a myth. It's not true. It's resting on a series of confusions about the nature of both services and commodities, the sorts of things which are manufactured. So I will focus initially on a few examples relating to the sale of cars made in the United States and sold to consumers in the United States. And there are basically steps in the process which look like this. The car is designed, the design is prototyped, tested, new tests are built, productization takes place. You try and work out if you could build a car according to the design which will make money and which will satisfy various other requirements. And then you decide to go ahead with manufacturing. You have the cars, you've made the cars, you sell the cars, deliver them to the sales showroom or to wherever they need to be. Some of them will be then rented. And of course, there will be a certain amount of maintenance. And in the end, there will be disposal or recycling or whatever is the end of life process for cars. Now, in the good old days, all of these things take place in the United States. They would design and build and sell the cars, and there would be no outsourcing of any part of the process. It would all take place in America. But now, at least the first three might, in principle, be outsourced. So for all we know, Cadillacs are designed in India and tested in China and manufactured in Singapore. Whether they are or not is not important to the argument I'm trying to build. These must still take place in the United States. So you're not going to be able to sell cars to United States consumers in the Philippines, United States consumers in the United States. You may be able to have a screen-based sales operation which has Filipino salespeople, and you persuade Americans and buy cars, but the American still has to be in America. That part, the sales part, be in America. And of course, the bank, the money of the person who's buying the car must have at least some footprint in it. And similarly, the car itself has to be delivered in America. Yeah, and the maintenance of that car has done in America, because you're not going to send the car to the Philippines every time it needs an oil change. Okay, so this is my favorite sales operation. It's in Liechtenstein, but and so we're paying for this, of course. The wonderfully elegant BMW showroom add to the price of what we buy when we buy a BMW. Now that means that this is a service component. These are genuine services, as I will explain in a minute. And you're paying for that, particularly if it takes place in extremely elegant buildings. All right, so why is that a service? First of all, let's look at some characteristic confusion. So this is a story about the original myth that I described. Microsoft employs 40,000 people in the US who are engaged in services called software design. And then there are 185 employees in Puerto Rico who burn the software onto disk. With a money-losing R&D outpost in Redmond, which employs 40,000 people. But that's for tax purposes, taxation of commodities, so-called. And the way in which services, so-called, and commodities, so-called, are recorded in national income statistics are, to put it mildly, ontologically confused. And they are deliberately ontologically confused because Microsoft and other groups lobby the corresponding authorities to make the tax treatment be in a certain way, as we all know. And so if you read that such and such is a service, you should not assume that it is a service. Commodities are things. You can buy them, you can sell them, you can rent them. They're not necessarily physical things. The software is a commodity. Services are process. Now, of course, the manufacturing of commodities is also a process. So we need to work out what makes those processes which are services distinct from those processes which belong to the realm of manufacturing. Some classic examples of services, which all to some degree are indeed services. Nursing is a good example. But the question is, what do all these have in common? And the answer is that they are all processes in which the production of something of economic value and the consumption of that something coincide. They coincide temporally, and leaving aside internet cables connecting the Philippines coincide spatially. There is a spatial and temporal coincidence of sales service provided by the salesperson. And that's the key to what a service is. That's why you can't sell a service and why you can't give it to someone else. So a service exists in being delivered, and there's nothing left. So what is music? This is an example. A musical performance in a concert hall is a service. There's nothing left. But what about music which has been burned to CDs? Is that a good or a service? Well, the musicians' lobby has persuaded the world to see music CDs as part of the service industry. Because music is high culture. It can't possibly be manufacturing. And so CDs are service items, which is nonsense. From our perspective, these are a commodity. We can give them as Christmas presents. So commodities are created deliberately. They have a function. They may have associated capabilities, and they last. They exist after they've been made. And that's why we can sell them and give them to somebody or rent them. And so a car is a commodity. So what is car rental? Car rental is often advertised the paradigm service industry. Now, when you buy a car, you go through the 4 steps. Someone makes it, and someone delivers it, and then the sales lady sells you the car and smiles and you sign, and then you drive the car away. What happens when you rent a car? Someone makes the car, delivers it to the rental showroom, sales lady rents the car, pay her the money, and you drive the car away. There's no difference. Car rental is just like buying a car. The difference doesn't have anything to do with the service component. The service component is the same. It's the friendly handshake, the carpet. What is different, and actually this is the same with renting an apartment. Renting an apartment, buying an apartment are from this point of view the same. Now let's do telephone service. Obviously it's a service, but think about what you pay for when you pay your telephone bill. You don't just want part of the telephone network, you want all of it, even when you're not using it. You still want to have that telephone network at your disposal for the whole month, even if you know that you're not going to be making any phone calls yourself, because someone might call you. And so my thesis is that the entire telephone network is a commodity, and it satisfies the criteria. It's deliberately created to exercise a certain function with certain capabilities. It survives its creation. And we rent it. We rent the whole network from month to month. And the reason why it doesn't cost very much is because 4 million other people are also renting the same whole network. So we share a big apartment, as it were. So when you pay your bill every month, you pay a portion of the bill over the whole network for 1 month. And then you pay another portion which pays for your use of the network at random short intervals. That's when you're making actual calls. The lion's share of the cost is in the paying for the whole network. Now this is a service. So you enjoy the services of the telephone network while those services, namely creating this connection through the thread to your the person you're talking to on the other end of the line, you enjoy that, and it exists for as long as you enjoy it, and then as soon as you stop enjoying it, consuming it, it disappears. And then telephones themselves they may also be a part of the bill. They are hardware, so they are commodities. But to use the technical terminology introduced by Professor Dumouchel yesterday, they afford usage, so we can use them to perform certain processes. But then we can use cars to perform processes in an exactly similar manner. It does not make telephones into services. It doesn't make the telephone network into a service. All right, now, similarly, theatrical performance is like a musical performance. So when we go to the theater, we enjoy the play, and then we go home, and we don't take anything with us. There's nothing, you can't sell it to someone else. You can't sell that experience. So what about television? So when you pay your cable TV fee, it probably says fee for a television service. So you think, television must be a service. The television network here consists of buildings where they produce television programs, or where they send out cameras to theaters, for instance, and record theatrical performances. And all of that is a commodity. The towers, the satellites, cameras, and so forth are a commodity. There's also the signal, but the signal is just like the telephone network, but we've already dealt with that. The signal is a kind of service. You can't sell it to someone else after you've watched a TV program. That's a relatively small cost of the telephone network that you pay when you pay your bill. And then there's the broadcast content. Surely that's a service, but it's not. It's canned. It's a commodity. And the fact that actors created it is no different from the fact that engineers created Cadillac. All right, now let's do maintenance. In the English language, you talk about taking your car in for a service. So the word is in the very language. And surely, therefore, car servicing is a service. So let's see what maintaining really is. And in order to see what maintaining is, you need to think about what manufacturing is. And very roughly, you start with some raw materials or with some pre-manufactured commodities, and then you join them and shape them and screw them together and program them, and you get an out commodity. There is then a further that's used by purchasers of your commodity. So we have further processes of using the thing. Okay, so certain later processes which are consumption and use processes. Now, as you use the car, you cause friction, you cause the car to come into contact with roads, create dust and dirt and so forth, and leads to the need for a maintenance process. It's the car, the very same car that you started with, comes out at the other end. What is involved in maintenance? Well, one thing which is involved in maintenance is you test the car. You test it to see what's broken or what might be broken, or you may test it for a government certificate of roadworthiness. You need to test it every year. And then also you may repair broken parts or remove broken parts and put new ones in, or you may clean, remove dust or remove gunk. Now, interestingly, that's also what happens when you go to the hospital. The first thing they do is test your body for roadworthiness, fuel economy, and so on, and then they repair defects in any existing parts if they can. Then they remove broken parts and install a new heart pacemaker or whatever it might be. And then they destroy the alien parts, the tumors, the gunk in your arteries. Now, healthcare is not a service. It's a variety of maintenance. And maintenance is not a service for a reason which I will explain shortly. Something that we haven't focused on, which is that we can manufacture not just physical things, but also informational things, digital things, deontic things. So contracts are manufactured by solicitors. Spreadsheets are manufactured by administrators, data nurses. Websites, we all know how they get made. Video games, YouTube videos. So these are all commodities, and I hope that this is clear. And one of the reasons why people think that the service industries are growing and the manufacturing industries are shrinking is because they assume that anything which is not made of physical particles must be a service because it's not a thing. So they have a kind of 19th century view of what manufacturing is. But the same thing applies to maintenance. So there are two kinds of maintenance. There is physical maintenance when you clean the car or replace the oil. And then there is informational maintenance. When you take your car in for a road test for government purposes, then the certificate, which nowadays I imagine is online, at least in China, the certificate adds to the value of your car as much as a nice new paint job. It adds crucially to the value of your car. Similarly, when you get your driving license, that adds crucially to the value of you. It's almost as good as a medical checkup. It gives you more freedom, and it's just an information artifact. It's not anything physical. Similarly, when you stick a QR code to your favorite tree, then you increase the value of the tree. And when you get your diploma in visible hand studies from the university, then that increases your employability. So these are all ways that informational maintenance, commodity, exists whether or not we actually do consume it. It's just there. It's either a physical thing or it's an informational thing. In the case of processing power, consumption is quite different. There is nothing to consume. There is only the consuming. Consuming and the creating are one and the same process, or anyway, they are conjoined and coincide spatially. Now, there are many test cases. One test case is, what about restaurant service? This is going to be a somewhat delicate case, but clearly a restaurant manufactures food. We go into the restaurant, the chefs and the sous chefs are there busy in their factory manufacturing these food items. We go in and we get greeted by the maid, shake hands, smile. That's the service. The mate takes us to our table, and then we order the meal that we want. It gets manufactured. It's delivered. Now, in this case, we withdraw the commodity. But in principle, we could. In fact, I do this very often. In principle, we could order the food and they take it home. Just the same thing. And we could sell it. I'm not quite at that point. All right, so I believe that the restaurant service fits very deeply. Now, insurance service. People say the insurance is a service. So what does it mean? And I think that insurance is an informational commodity, manufacturing. People don't like to hear the word manufacturing in connection with insurance because they think insurance is being somehow intellectual. But actually, it's a process of manufacturing. And it's selling insurance as a service, but it's and that's why you have the carpets, insurance agent office. So is selling a car. So what is it that you buy when you buy insurance? I think it's informational deontic maintenance. By increasing the value of the insured object to you, by allowing you to take more risk, roughly. In other words, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars on protecting your house in Florida. You just spend hundreds of dollars because you have insurance. And now we can go back to the Microsoft claim. Of course, software design service is part of the manufacturing product lifecycle. It's part of the manufacturing. People don't like to think of software as manufacturing because they think of software as somehow. But okay, now comes the first conclusion is that nearly every commodity goes hand in hand with bundles of services like selling, but they're not. That doesn't mean that they are services. Microsoft has salespeople. They are selling. That's a service. But Microsoft is not a service industry corporation. It's a manufacturing corporation. All right, the second conclusion, what we think of as paying for a service is often paying for a commodity. And this is protection, police, I can deal with bodyguards, the internet, car rental, telephone, transport, and so on. And then the third conclusion, now this is really, I'm winging it. I'm now beginning to think that haircutting or gardening, which are classical, traditional services, are in fact also manufacturing. So what does the barber create? It's a new pattern on your head. Now this is not fully convincing because you can't sell that pattern. You can sell an exact copy, but of course, you can't sell that pattern either. Only an exact copy if you're lucky. So I do not believe that these are manufactured in the same sense as all the other cases, because you can't sell them. And so that's the end.